of you went to the Open Faint party? How many of you had trouble waking up? It was a great party. So today we're kicking off the emerging platforms track here in the Founders Room. My name is Jussi Laakkonen. I'm the CEO and founder of Amplifier, which is a cross-promotion platform for games on Facebook and mobile. I'm really happy to be here to be presenting these awesome speakers. So let's start with the show. We're going to be talking about how casual games rule. So really we've seen the casual phenomenon extend from the PC downloadable to mobile and social, and a lot of the games we see succeeding on Facebook are definitely what you would call a casual game, being adapted to a social. Of course, the perfect examples are games like Collapse from Real, the Scrabble games. You've also seen Bejeweled become extremely successful on the platform, and I wouldn't be surprised that we're going to see more of that. The most recent example is from Playdom. Gardens of Time absolutely crushing it on Facebook, and who would have seen that like 6 months ago? There were no hidden object games making it. So we're going to see the same, I think, on mobile. We're going to see like asynchronous social adaptations of casual games using the free-to-play model to monetize on mobile. Somebody's going to really crack the formula on that and make a ton of money. I think these people know better than I do what works and what doesn't. So let me introduce you to the panelists and the moderator. So first we have AJ Glasser. She's a lead writer at Inside Social Games, covering games and other phenomena on the Facebook market. And of course, the Inside Network also covers mobile games. So they're in a great position to look at the market both on the mobile and the Facebook side. On the panel, we have Ken Murphy from Real Networks and Gamehouse. Ken is the VP of Studios, where he's leading all the global development. He's really taken the company and focused the properties like Collapse and Scrabble on social. And they're doing, I've just heard that they're launching a lot of great titles this fall, so we're going to hear about their strategy. We have Olivier DELFOSSE. Olivier is with Fremantle, and of course you all know Fremantle through American Idol, America's Got Talent, and all these awesome shows like Family Feud. Family Feud was one of the breakout hits of last year. Olivier was leading the, as a VP of Interactive, he's leading the mobile, digital, and interactive content. So I'm sure they are working on a number of titles, which we are excited to hear how they rule on cross-platform. And last but not least, we have Lars JORNOW from King.com. He was previously working with a product called FunFlow, one of the exciting properties, a game portal on Facebook that really rose rapidly to 1 million MAU. Now he's the director of product performance on social and mobile, and he's been working on such hit titles like Minor Speed. So over to you guys, and AJ, take it away.
Good morning. How are you? I actually wanted to start off with some definitions just to get us kind of started, because a lot of the times when we talk about social and mobile games, we have a habit of calling all of them casual. This is not exactly accurate. For today, let us define casual games as experiences that can be really easy to learn but difficult to master, designed for short gameplay bursts. This is in contrast to hardcore games, which are harder to learn and are designed for much longer gameplay sessions. Social games are games that are available on social networks, like mobile games are games that are available on smartphones, feature phones, or tablets. Those are the definitions we're sticking with today. There's obviously a lot of room for deliberation, but we're more here to talk about what cross-platform means for casual games. So to start off with our panelists, gentlemen, I want to ask each of you how you would define cross-platform as it pertains to casual games. Ken, do you want to start?
Sure, be happy to. Well, you know, I think it's intriguing. There's a very simplistic kind of binary black and white view of all of this. You could, in my mind, define multi-platform games as any game that's available on more than one platform, but that doesn't really have any synergy or connectivity between them. I suppose the holy grail of a definition of cross-platform would be live, synchronous multiplayer. I'm on my connected phone and you're playing on your PC, and we're battling it out in the very same game. But I actually think there's a range of cross-platform connectivity that can be defined as cross-platform play that just makes sure that your game experiences are somehow linked and synchronized. I think Bejeweled Blitz is a great example of what I would consider to be cross-platform.
Okay. Olivier, I hope I did not pronounce your name wrong.
No, that's definitely right. I would agree with Ken. I mean, for us, having brands, it's important that the gameplay experience is actually the same across platform, and we are certainly trying to move towards having that gameplay connected, and I think we will as we develop more mobile social games that are connected with our Facebook game extensions. But for us as brand ambassadors, and that's what me and my team do at our company, it's really important that the essence of the games that we develop have the same cross-platform. And so when we work with partners that develop our games, it's important that they can create a very rich game experience that trickles across all the multiple platforms that we work on.
What about you, Lars?
Yeah, for us at King.com, cross-platform gaming is a real opportunity to allow our players to enjoy our casual games on new platforms and do that in an integrated way that they can connect from, for example, their iPhone or their Android device via Facebook Connect and have the same high score lists or same progression as they do when they play the game on Facebook or on King.com.
So when you say progression, you mean that I can maintain my high score between minor speed on Facebook and minor speed on my iPhone?
Exactly. And then the game is usually the same in layout and level progression, but we obviously try to play up the advantages of, for example, a touchscreen tablet or a touchscreen phone. It's a different controlling mechanic. And here's Jim.
I'm gonna pause it now for a moment of public shaming for Jim Ying. He's the SVP of Publishing at Six Waves. And he's a little late today, so we're actually going to pose him the question now. How do you define cross-platform?
Cross-platform. Cross-platform would be games on multiple platforms where players can interact with each other. So it's been a couple of years at Microsoft Xbox. We worked on Shadowrun there, PC, and Xbox 360 cross-platform first-person shooter. That's how I define cross-platform.
What about Facebook Connect? Is that enough? If I play Paradise Eve on Facebook and also on iOS and I just use Facebook Connect to connect my social graph, would that count?
No. I'd say that's just an authorization method, login method.
How do the rest of you feel? About the same?
No, not entirely, because as I mentioned before, I think that, Jim, as you define it, you're right. That's absolutely cross-platform as you define it, but I do think that there are steps in between that give the user the ability to make sure that their gameplay states are with them wherever they go. And although, it might not meet the purest definition of cross-platform, at least the way that we've talked about it, and even particularly coming from kind of the core and the console side of the business about the way that we've thought as an industry about it, I think these are very important bridges that are being built between platforms. And I personally believe, I know we're going to talk about technology a little bit later, that things like tablets are going to wind up being game changer technologies that are going to create user expectations about this level of cross-device connectivity in their gameplay states.
All right. Our next question then is, in the last 12 months or so, how have each of you seen audiences sort of evolve in their gameplay habits? I want to actually start with you, Lars, because King.com draws its origins from a standalone website where they host tournaments. Then you went to social, and only now are you getting into mobile. How have you seen the audience evolve?
We had a panel here yesterday with a few of our customers who are called the gaming moms. And they got a question from the audience asking, would you like to play on tablets if you could? And they all were very, very bullish on tablets. One of them said that if an iPad was cheaper, I would buy one for each of my family members. And then we would sit at home and play together, each one of on our tablets. And I think that's a big, like Ken was mentioning too, it's a big change in the industry coming up now with tablet gaming and having players play wherever they are and get a similar, if not better, experience on whatever platform they want to play it on.
Olivier, for brands, do you see your customers wanting to see their brands on iOS more than they want to see it, say, on a tablet or on Facebook?
I'd say right now, not really. I'd say it's about the same. I mean, obviously and this is no surprise to anybody, but where we've seen obviously a huge shift is traditional retail market. That's just collapsed for us more or less. But I'd say right now we're probably split between the interest in Facebook and iOS, but I foresee that changing.
Okay. Ken?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting because, as probably many in the room know, it's very difficult to really track and get deep insights on the mobile side of the equation. Much like King.com, GameHouse.com has a sizable traditional direct-to-consumer presence. One of the things that we do know about our demographic and psychographic splits are that, almost 2/3 of the audience on gamehouse.com, for example, already has a Facebook account, and nearly half of those folks have said they'd be perfectly happy to link their Facebook account profiles into gamehouse.com. And nearly half of them are already playing games out there. So, I mean, taking a look at our quote-unquote traditional direct-to-consumer casual audience on the PC side of the business, it's very clear the social connectivity is there. It's a little tougher to suss out the mobile connectivity. One little anecdotal piece of information I can provide is that just last week we introduced a new reward system on our site, and we threw a mobile tab up there the first time that we've had that, and overnight we've seen a double-digit increase in our iOS unit sales. So it's clear that that audience is out there on multiple devices right now. I wish I had deeper, better throughput insights about exactly how that audience is behaving on each one of those platforms, but at least kind of reading the tea leaves, we know they're out there in multiple places.
Anything to add, Jim?
I think I'd just say, so 6wave is primarily on social networks, Facebook, and 2 networks in Japan. And what we've been seeing in terms of developers talking to us, in terms of games that are coming out on the network, it's definitely that other genres that were predominantly on other platforms, let's say whether it's first-person shooter, hidden objects, match 3, these are largely moving, a lot of them are moving onto Facebook in some form or manner. There still needs to be tweaking and tuning, but it's only a matter of time before audiences realize that these games are available on Facebook. And it's not as if these people aren't on Facebook right now. The moms who are playing hidden objects games, they're on Facebook. The kids, the younger guys who are playing first-person shooters, they're on Facebook. It's just a matter of, is there the content that's on that platform for them, and are they realizing that that content is there? Once those 2 things are there, then, and the technology is there, people are gonna play a lot more of these games on Facebook.
So as you're dealing with sort of different sections of audience and you're watching, the player behavior across each, do you observe that different games require, the different devices need a different type of gameplay to really connect with their audience? So with a casual game, for example, with Match 3, I can do that on my iOS, no problem. I can do that just as easily on Facebook with the click interface. King.com's Bubble Saga is sort of a bubble shooter, has a bit of this nude thing going on where you're shooting a projectile up into the air. That could work on iOS, but you had told me that you were planning instead to put it on tablet.
Yeah, so Bubble Saga will come out on tablets, Android and iPad. It's probably just more convenient and a better experience to play it on tablet rather than a small iPhone due to the larger playing area. So in that sense, iPhones are, and Android phones are sometimes limited in the gameplay. It's just not a great experience, and it's better to focus on where we think that the customers will enjoy the game the most, and that's tablet in this case.
I mean, I'd say for us, it's the universality of the gameplay and it being the same across all those platforms is why we're actually really bullish about mobile, because I think it'll just live, rising tide lifts all boats. And I mean, you can play Family Feud the exact same way, and it's out right now on the tablet, on your iPhone, on Facebook as a downloadable game. It's, for all intents and purposes, the gameplay is the exact same, and the game looks the same, and that's appealing to people.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's clear that over the last 2 years or so, really heralded by the introduction of iOS, the gap is closing. The gap used to be huge. Any of you that have been in the business for a while and know what it was like to be putting games out on traditional mobile devices, compared to the kinds of experience you could deliver on a PC, it was a mammoth gap, and that gap is continuing to close. There's some clear areas in our experience in publishing games both on mobile and on PC devices. There are certain areas where the small screen is just a limiter. There's only so much that you can do. Hidden object games, I think, are going to perform extremely well on tablet devices, and they, historically haven't performed all that well on small screen devices because they're just, quite frankly, very, very small, and there's not a whole lot you can do about that. But this is one of the reasons why I think casual has the potential to really be the pointy end of the stick when it comes to cross-platform device integration, because there's a wide range of genres that you can now technologically deliver very consistent experiences, whether you're on the canvas on Facebook, whether you're in a download environment, or whether you're in a mobile environment. And I think we're seeing more and more of that. I think Minor Speed is a great example of that. that, just as Bejeweled Blitz is a great example of that.
Yeah, I think I agree with the opinion shared here. Ultimately, it comes down to the experience. If it's an experience that can be shared across multiple platforms, and people can have that same experience, whether it's playing on their iPhone or playing in front of their PC or in their console, it'll happen. People will want to bring those games along with them. Certain genres, certain gameplay styles, let's say, real-time strategy or a first-person shooter. Sometimes either it's technology or the interface. It's just not going to be viable on certain platforms. And in those situations, it's probably not the right thing to do.
So let's talk a bit then about the technology as it's evolved, kind of in the same time period as the audience has evolved. What have we kind of seen become available to developers to use as tools to build truly cross-platform experiences? So, there's been a lot of talk about HTML5 and the fabled Project Spartan from Facebook. What have been your experiences with these products and also with some gameplay mechanic ideas for how to keep things consistent and how to share certain elements of the game across multiple devices?
I think there's no doubt that HTML5 is probably the next technology that will allow cross-platform gaming in an easy way for developers as well to just create the game in HTML5 and it will work on the web, on phones and tablets. Other than that, I think we're still quite a bit away from having synchronized games, synchronized multiplayer, being able to play that on a mobile device. Partly because you can never guarantee that the end customer has internet or reliable internet. So far, and I think that's going to stay true for the next year or so, asynchronous gaming will still rule mobile gaming when it comes to cross-platform.
I mean, I can't speak to the technology as much because Fremantle acts mostly as a licensor for our products, but I know that I would agree that for a game like Price is Right, which is a multiplayer game on Facebook, I know that requires a different level of integration into making it into a mobile social game than say Family Feud, which is an asynchronous game.
Yeah, I agree both, and Lars, I agree with you as well that HTML5 probably offers the best long-range potential, and so I'm excited about the continued investment and evolution in it. I think the intriguing part of starting to break down some of the core platform capabilities, and my personal opinion is HTML5 has a long way to go before it can deliver the same kind of quality experience that a native app can deliver right now. I'm a big believer in integrating the middleware, if you will, if you call Facebook Connect kind of a middleware or a middle layer or a stepping stone technology to drive all this together. I'm a very large proponent of that. I think that the really intriguing thing is going to be that when you finally have the capability to deliver the right kind of quality experience on a mobile web kind of platform, the channel level conflicts that can start to arise from this are going to be really kind of the fascinating part of all this. And I think in many ways it's going to put us as developers kind of stuck to some degree between a rock and a hard place when it comes to our platform level alliances and the kinds of conflicts that could arise between channel partners or channel combatants, I guess you will. Really, frankly, just getting right down to payments and who gets to hold the tolls along the way.
Yeah, I think HTML5 is a vision for how it would be great if all of these things work together. You build once, and then you could just release on multiple platforms. Shorter term, we're actually in conversations with a couple of developers who are building in Unity. So a lot of the strong pitch there is, all right, we can build for at least both iOS and Facebook, assuming that Facebook is able to drive Unity adoption among its players. And we're seeing, there definitely are games out there. One of the games we published, Uber Strike, is run in Unity. We have a couple of other Unity titles in the pipeline. So that might be an interim solution. But I think ultimately it'll come down to what's the technology that's ubiquitous among the players out there.
Would any of you say that casual games have an edge for HTML5 because they're not as demanding in terms of what needs to be done for graphics?
Oh, definitely. I think most of our games are not as advanced as if you look at a core game or a first-person shooter. I mean, it's going to be pretty. I've seen some first-person shooters in HTML5, and they look okay. But I mean, compared to the games that we make, we're kind of in a sweet spot to make HTML5 games out of them.
I would agree with that. That said, I think any of the developers on our team too would say, hey, you know, they're constantly in a drive to improve the polish and the look and feel and the caliber of the games. And so there's always development level friction between the things that you can do at a native level versus the things that you have to kind of quote unquote water down to do with something that's cross-platform. So this is the reason why I'm a big proponent of seeing HTML5 continue to push and be evolving as a technology. And I would agree that at a fundamental level, casual has a better ability probably to be the pointy end of the stick in driving that forward.
Okay. So outside of the technology boundaries that you kind of come up against when you're trying to go for a cross-platform experience, what are some other kind of friction points? I mean, I wanted to get into a discussion about brand licensing, because if you cannot have a truly cross-platform experience where I can start a level on my phone and finish it on my PC, what about a Family Feud game that I recognize on my phone, but I also want it from Facebook, but it goes through 2 different companies or 2 different developers?
I guess that one's directed at me.
Yep.
What I would say is that we're striving to make that experience unified. There are some very real considerations that as a company that we have to deal with in terms of there is the expectation that we will build products in any particular vertical with the best AAA partner. And until recently, and Ken and I were talking about this, I wasn't convinced that a mobile developer could build a social game, because it's a very different set of skills, and I think everybody in here probably knows that. I think gradually people are starting to accumulate those skill sets under one roof, either by acquisition or developing, or just testing and trying new IP or original IP. But for something as important as some of our evergreen brands, that was a very big consideration and a chance that we didn't want to take. Now, we have had some experience actually taking that leap of faith, like we did that with Price is Right, and we have one developer, Ludia, who has built the games across platform, across every vertical, so downloadable Facebook, iOS, and it's been successful across every vertical. But we had to do a very, very strong analysis of that company just to make sure that they could do it. And not every company, or not every developer, I think, is up to the task.
Interesting, kind of on the developer side of this, since Olivier and I, we partner on projects. I think it also requires a bit of a leap of faith and a real commitment on the part of the developer as well, and particularly for players like my company, for example, that have been in each of these verticals. And the use of that word is actually illustrative of the problem, right? If I think of it as a vertical and I don't think of it holistically and across those platforms, then I have to make sure that I'm thinking differently, that our organization is thinking differently about the level of commitment and the integration that we create at the development side of what we do in order to deliver on the promise. Because otherwise, if we don't think holistically and horizontally across our platforms, if we're going to execute something like that, then we run the very real risk of delivering exactly what Olivier would be concerned about: sub-optimization in any given one of those channels and a lack of synergy across them.
Yeah, I'd say the challenge there, which Olivier definitely touched upon, is finding a studio or a company that has the skill sets all under one roof who can build multi-platform. And so if let's say I'm a developer, most of our developers are somewhere in the 10 to 20, 30 person range. I'm building, let's say, a social game, and I'm considering building game 2. I can either, let's say, work on, start up a whole new team, try to build up a whole new expertise in the mobile space, try to build some connectivity. There's no assurances that A, I'll understand the mobile space, or B, I'll be able to build some connectivity that makes sense. Or I could double down on the social side. I already have that skill set. I know how to monetize users. I know how to retain users. From that studio's perspective, which is the right decision. If you're a larger company, perhaps like Real, and you have all those companies or those capabilities under your roof already, and you're willing to take that risk and make that investment, right, maybe it makes sense. But if I'm a smaller studio and I need to make the decision, do I stick with what I know and that I know I can win on, or branch out and take a huge risk?
Yeah,
I don't know which one.
And that makes the decision for us more difficult, because then there's companies like yours that we can go with for that, and then somebody else for something else. And is that the better decision for us, perhaps?
One more point on this. So that's on the kind of channel or technology or platform side. The other related topic to this is from the geographic standpoint. I'm pretty sure that this is the situation with Fremantle, but definitely, talking to Endemol and talking to a lot of brand owners, a lot of the traditional experience has been they'll carve out, sometimes based on their own internal organizations, by geography. So North America, Europe, Asia. And as you move to platforms like Facebook, like iPhone, that are global in nature, especially once you layer on that social layer, and a lot of the fun comes from interacting with other people across the world through your friends or whatever, it makes a lot less sense to carve it out as geographies, and it makes it a lot more challenging from the developer and the publisher standpoint to do that. I think it makes sense why it's the case, but a lot of the brands and IP owners that we're talking to, it's an issue that almost always comes up.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's funny. Within our organization, it's definitely pushed to be, I think that it's kind of a sea change in how we're going to approach licensing, because certainly for traditional categories, maybe not, but I don't think there's any, I don't think there's many deals that we will do in the future in the social space that won't be for worldwide, because to be honest, I have no idea how to do that. I mean, getting territorial reporting and it's just crazy complicated. So it just required some internal education within our own companies, and I think that's what's necessary for this.
So then let me ask you, what is your advice to developers who are looking to go cross-platform? I mean, obviously you want to push for make casual games and make those cross-platform, but if they're trying to deal with these challenges of technology and of brand licensing, especially if they're shopping for brands, or if they're looking for a publisher and the publisher maybe doesn't do licensing on mobile, what would you advise a developer who's starting out to try to realize the dream of cross-platform?
Just make social games.
Yeah, just focus on social. We haven't been I mean, I haven't thought about this. It's a good question. I don't know. Maybe figure out what the overall package is in terms of a partner that can help develop in the areas that you might be deficient in. And that nobody's actually come to us with that, but would be an interesting approach, I suppose. We're always open to those kind of things.
I think that even if the same company makes the game for all platforms, like in our case, we have our own IPs and we develop the games for all the platforms. We also faced the question, should we have the same team make the game for all platforms, or should we have a mobile team, a social team, and we're working on different games? And so far, we've found that the best result is when the same team makes the game for all the platforms, because it's more difficult to get a team to get the right feeling for the game than having the members of the team learn new technologies.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think Olivier really did touch on the fact, and Jim as well, that there are a few players in this space that really can deliver quality product across all of those platforms, and they're good places to go. As an individual developer, you kind of get yourself in a place where you have to place your bets, and to some degree, you kind of have to figure out which of the platforms that you're going to focus on and which of the partners you're really going to optimize and build your business around. You need to do that to be able to create your momentum. So probably my best advice would say, don't be afraid to partner. I think that particularly in this emerging world where devices like tablets are going to start to create convergence amongst this content, I think as an industry overall, we could do a much better job of partnering with each other and learning how to leverage our respective strengths and working together to create situations where, from an end user experience, the delineation between our companies is not nearly as large as maybe it's been in the past. So, if I were kind of speaking to folks that are out there, building IP and really trying to make it work, I'd really recommend find somebody else in a similar situation on the other platform side and find a way to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. The rigidity of our deal making is nowhere where it used to be, which is good, and to me, it adds a layer of innovation to what we're trying to all do in this space.
All right, we are at the end of our main line of questioning. You guys get first dibs on questions you want to ask each other before we open it up to the general audience.
That's kind of interesting.
I hadn't thought about that.
We could always just open it straight up to the audience if none of you want to attack each other. All right, well, if anybody has any questions, right up front, there you go.
Tim Merrill, DigiCapital. We're a games investment bank. What do you find are the different challenges in building a genuine transmedia franchise which makes sense across games platforms but also beyond games, compared to building a games franchise that just happens to be on a bunch of different platforms?
Oh, you're kind of touching on the notion that the IP itself can transcend the game experience. Angry Birds, for example?
I was going to say Angry Birds is probably the best example.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fascinating question. I think that there are a lot of it does depend upon the level of integration and quite frankly, the kind of character development that you have the ability to build into the game itself. So I'll take one of our properties, for example. Collapse, is a well-known game mechanic, and it continues to be very popular for us on all of our platforms. And there are probably extension opportunities beyond the digital experience. You could imagine a real-world analog to a Collapse game, but it probably lacks the kind of innate character appeal that a game like an Angry Birds has. So I'd say that if you're going to try to push beyond your ability to get your IP to live in just the digital gameplay world, there's got to be a little bit more to it in terms of its character and story development that really anchors that experience. And I think it's to be honest with you, kind of a rare experience in the casual world to see that really happen successfully. Maybe a little bit more obvious in the core world, where you've got franchises, like a Tomb Raider, for example, that have been able to find a life beyond just its gameplay experience.
I personally think that there's a really unique opportunity in the game show space, because game shows have proven to work well in the social gaming space. And we're piloting internally projects where we're looking to develop a social game to create a following so that our development TV people can go in and say, here's a project that already has a following, here's the gameplay mechanic, let's sell it to you for a TV show. So that to me is really interesting. Nobody's really done it yet, but maybe we'll be the first.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think there's an opportunity there.
I'd agree with that, definitely Ken, in terms of it's about what the experience of that game is. If it's something like Collapse, Bejeweled, where the gameplay fundamentally is about tapping fast or clicking fast and matching things up, how transferable really is that to other mediums? Whereas if you look at a game like World of Warcraft, or originally it was a RTS, but ultimately the reason why they were able to transfer it to MMO, and I could definitely see movie, cartoons, yada yada, is because they built a whole world on top of that core gameplay. And so games that do layer more of that experience on top of the core gameplay, I think have the ability to transcend the original medium that they're on. Angry Birds is actually kind of surprising that they were able to break out, kind of, because I thought Angry Birds was just kind of shooting birds at stuff. If they built a kind of a storyline on top of it, I think that's what you really need to break out.
What's Angry Birds like on social? We were talking about cross-platform games here.
So we've actually seen multiple submissions to our network of developers who've tried to build Angry Birds-like games. And it's fun because you're like, oh, this is like Angry Birds. But fundamentally, somehow something gets lost because you're not manually shooting the birds. It's still kind of fun to pull back the catapult and shoot at stuff. But somehow it's not the same experience. I'm sure that someone will try it and it'll maybe get big, but we haven't seen it yet. There you go.
I definitely agree with Jim here that if the game isn't as fun as it is in its original shape, it's probably not going to explode and be the same success. And I think Angry Birds is a lot of the success is attributed to the intuitive controls you have on a touchpad or a touchscreen. And if you don't have that on your laptop or computer, it's probably not going to be the same success.
All right. Are there any other questions from the floor? Yes.
Olivier, I wanted to ask you to follow up a little bit more and talk about how digital and specifically cross-platform fits into the larger brand strategy for your brands as a licensor.
Sure. I mean, more or less, the remit is to have high quality games on all the emerging platforms, built with AAA partners. That's as simple as I can condense kind of what our strategy is, and that actually has been pretty easy for us because we are fortunate enough to have good brands to work with. So, so it's easy to get people to on board to actually do that. How that plays into the kind of overall strategy for brand licensing is, is pretty simple. It allows us to kind of extend the experience of the brand that we also, our licensing division also does consumer products, they do live events, they do all these kind of things. Holistically, that builds up what we consider, what we call a brand, right? And the gaming experience is just one kind of spoke of that.
Anyone else? I will let you go early if that is your heart's desire. All right, well, thank you guys very much for today, and thank you for your time.